Hey guys, I'm your Props, and today I'm going to show you how I made Malcolm's pistol from Firefly using my 3D printer and some paint. If you guys want to print this for yourself, I'll have all of the files available on my Thingiverse page, so links to that in the description. I printed my whole thing out on a 3.75mm layer height, so it is a little rough in some spots, so I just went through and lightly sanded some of those areas, as well as I glued together all of the parts. The handle just slots into the main body, and the barrel just slides into the main body as well, using a small hole that I made. And I just used some super glue on all of the plugs just to make sure they all fit super snugly, and then I used some more around all the edges to make sure that they were sealed and no light was coming out. I used some Rust-Oleum copper paint to spray paint the whole gun a copper color. I made sure to hit all of the nooks and crannies and everywhere so that everywhere was copper, and I didn't have anywhere that was like black or anything. And then I went through and used some gloss brown airbrush paint to paint the handle brown. I mentioned these new brushes I got in an earlier video, but they're really nice because they don't streak as bad as my other ones, and they really give it a nice even coat as opposed to some of my older brushes. Even though the brush is nice, you still gotta do a couple light coats of brown so that you don't get brush strokes or anything, even though they would just add more of a wood grain texture. So I mean, if you want that texture, go ahead and do heavier coats, but I didn't want that, so I just did some light coats. I think I did 3 or 4 light coats of this brown over it. I went through and airbrushed on some of the black shading in all of the nooks and crannies and crevices and everything, just to give it a really nice worn and shaded look. I adjusted my air compressor a couple of times just to get the paint flow right, and so what I ended up doing was 35 psi along with a mixture of about 3/4 black paint to 1/4 of airbrush thinner. And I just bought this thinner on Amazon. It's a pretty cheap thing. I think it was like $5 for a quart of it, so pretty inexpensive. And I just shaded this in all of the crevices like I said earlier. To get kind of a more organic look, I did wipe off some of the paint on the edges to give it a worn look, like the shading had kind of been removed to give it the effect of chipping or something similar to that. I painted the trigger and the trigger guard and then the end of the grip silver, as well as did a black wash on the handle to give it a wood grain texture, but I forgot to film all that. Well, actually my camera ran out of storage, so it didn't store any of that film, but anyways, I really like how this gun turned out, and it looks pretty nice. I'm really a fan of how this whole thing came together. There is some flaws and I could have filled some of the print lines, but overall it's pretty nice, and I'm a big fan of the weathering and everything. It also fits pretty well in my hand. I have pretty big hands, so I scaled this up a little larger than the screen use prop is, but I really like how it turned out. This build wouldn't have been possible if not for my Patreon and Etsy, so if you guys are interested in either of those, be sure to go check those out. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys don't mind liking and subscribing, please do. Let me know what builds and stuff you guys want me to make, and I'll go and try to make them. See you guys next vid. Bye.